Welcome learners and students. I am Dr. Imtazul Huda, Assistant Professor, Department of Islamic Studies, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today we have to go to the lecture 5 of the Sokoto movement. Now, dear students, first of all, we have to look into what were the major events of the Sokoto movement. In that one, I have categorized the Fulani Jihad. If you remember, since the first lecture, I have been talking about the Hausa Fulani land. And the founder of the movement, founder of the caliphate, Usman dan Fodio, belonged to the Fulani family. So he has mobilized his people to come to the faith which they had left. And he has infused the teaching of Tawheed, the concept of Shirk, and also talk about the articles of faith. Now, for that one, he had organized a campaign against the people who had become apostate, who had left the trend of Islam. It was against the rulers, the ruler of the Hausa Fulani land. At that time, the ruler was Nafata. And Nafata initially supported Usman dan Fodio. And he even get his son Yanfu enrolled in the circle of Usman dan Fodio. But later onward, differences had triggered between Usman dan Fodio and the ruler of the Hausa Fulani land on the basis of the opinion and the approaches. Hence, Usman dan Fodio launched the Fulani Jihad. Dear students, it was a series of religious wars that took place in West Africa during the 19th century. It was basically led by the Fulani people. And these conflicts, as I had just now told, was aimed to spread Islam and to establish the Islamic State in the region, to be governed by the Caliph, the Sharia law to be imposed. Further, we can say that these jihad were driven by the desire to reform and a return to what the leader believed were the true teachings of Islam. Usman dan Fodio, his brother Abdullahi dan Fodio, even his son Muhammad Bello, and also his daughter Nana Asmaru were totally involved in the jihad that has started in the Hausa Fulani land. During these jihad, various leaders emerged. We found the emergence of various leaders. The leader, the name that I have mentioned, who played a significant role in uniting different groups. What we have discussed, they made a circle, and each circle was headed by the Amir. And they have become, or they had played a very significant role in uniting the different groups under the banner of Islam. Dear learners, further, when we analyze that this particular jihad, the Sokoto jihad, the Fulani jihad, was conducted against the Hausa state, that include the state of Kano, that include the state of Zaria, That includes the state of Castina. Further, we can say that jihad led to the establishment of several powerful emirates. Now, what I said, that the amirs, the circles, the amirs, these amirs, the followers of the Usman dan Fodio, who had spread to their region, they later onward, after a jihad, they established their own emirates. For example, the Kano Emirate, the Katsina Emirate, the Zaria Emirate, the Bauchi Emirate, the Admawa Emirate, including the Sokoto Caliphate. This was the effect of the jihad. They had defeated all the infidel rulers of this region, because these infidel rulers were distracting the people. They were not firm on the Islam. Though they claim to be a Muslim, but their practices doesn't seem to be a Muslim. That's why the kingdom was un-Islamic. So this was the purpose of the jihad, to make the region a pure Islamic region that has to be governed by one leader, that is the Khalifa. That's why when Usman dan Fodio laid foundation to the Sokoto Caliphate, he declared himself as Amirul Mu'mineen, the leader of the faithful. And it was his inspiration that was followed by his representative, the amirs of the circus, who further intensified the teachings of Usman dan Fodio, that resulted, what I have said, the establishment of various emirates. Let's have a glance over some few battle and campaign. I have mentioned two that are worthy to mention. The first one that was fought in 1804, the Battle of Tafkin Kowato, and it was the kingdom of Zamfara, and the ruler of the kingdom of Zamfara was defeated by the Fulani jihadists, and that led to the Islamization, complete Islamization of the kingdom of Zamfara. Sharia was implemented after the defeat of the kingdom of Zamfara. Further, the fall of the Al-Kalawa. Al-Kalawa was a headquarter of the ruler of Hausa Fulani state, the ruler of Gobir, Nafata. As I have said earlier, initially Nafata was in favor of Usman dan Fodio. He even get his son Yanfu enrolled in the circle of Usman dan. But on the political aspect, differences arose between them. Now from there, Nafata had imposed sanction on the activities and the movement of Usman dan Fodio. And he even had declared that from this period onward, no more the preaching of Islam will be held in the region. This also called to the jihad to be waged by Usman dan Fodio. And it was the region, the place, Al Kalawa, where the forces of Usman dan Fodio met with the forces of Yanfu, who became the ruler after the demise of his father Nafata. These two forces fought with each other. And as the history narrates, the forces of Yanfu cannot survive before the jihadists, the Fulani jihadists. And in that one, Yanfu even died while defending his capital Al Kalawa in 1808 AD, thus marking an end to the kingdom of Gobir, and the foundation of the Sokoto Caliphate was laid down after the end of the kingdom of Gobir. Dear learners, let's have a glance who were the principal figures of the Sokoto movement. I have mentioned three important personalities of whom I have already, the name of whom I have already mentioned. The first one was Abdullahi Dan Fodio. He was the brother of Usman Dan Fodio, and he played a very important role in spreading the message of his brother, the message of the Sokoto movement. As it is evident, he survived till the mid to the first quarter of the 19th century, up to 1829 AD. He was very important scholar, and he was also a prolific writer. He knows the script of the Islam. He was a scholar in, on his own respect. He was the expert of fiqh also. He was expert of the hadith also, and the Quran. So he was a very effective person of the Sokoto movement. Abdullahi Dan Fodio has written numerous or produced numerous works in support of the Sokoto movement also. And basically, his work reinforced the religious and political philosophy of the Sokoto movement in the region. Apart from his brother Usman Dan Fodio, he himself has written, and it has an effect in the society. Those who got educated, they learned from his work. Now, another important figure was Muhammad Bello. He was the son of Usman Dan Fodio. After the demise of Usman Dan Fodio, he became the Khalifa. And he also lived up to 1837. He was born in 1781 and lived up to 1837. And as the historians are of the viewpoint that he was instrumental in organizing the governance of the caliphate and documenting its history. It means he was, like his father, like his uncle, a great scholar in his own respect. He documented the event and the narratives of the caliphate. Whatsoever we are knowing about the Sokoto Caliphate, we know through the works of Usman Dan Fodio, Abdullahi Dan Fodio, and Muhammad Bello. Another key figure was the daughter of Usman Dan Fodio, whose name was Nana Asmau. She was born in 1793 toward the end of the 18th century and survived up to the mid of the 19th century, that is up to 1864. She was a very great personality. She was a scholar. She was a poet. She was an educator. She used to recite her own poetry, and her poetry has an effect in the Sokoto society, in the Fulani society. And many people of the Fulani land remembered his poetry and they used to sing his poetry. And his poetry was have a charisma of attracting the people. And through her poetry, she was talking about the true teaching of Islam. The spirit of Islam she was infusing through her poetry in her society. And apart from that one, she was also an educator. She was a teacher. She has a huge following of women. Dear learners and students, you all must have observed in the earlier lecture that this particular movement had stress upon the education, and especially they were very keen about the education of the women. And the daughter of Usman Danfodio was a pioneer in this. She was a model that the woman should also be educated, that they can play an important role in the construction of the society, and as well as Nana Asmau also played a very crucial role in promoting women's education. As I have said, the school that was set up by the Sokoto movement, the local schools, she herself has monitored many schools where special classes were conducted for the education of the women and as well as for the girl child. She was a very learned woman. She knows various languages and used to write on those languages. She wrote majorly in Arabic, in the Hausa language, the language of the region, a dialect, and also Fulfide language. And in this language, the local language, the Hausa language, and the Fulfide language, she used to recite the poetry, as I have said, because she considered that the poetry is an important means of teaching women about Islam, because the couplets, the quadruplets, and many more variants of the poetry attracts the society. And people learn that by heart also. So his poetry has an effect in the women's of the Hausa Fulani region. And apart from that one, educating the women, educating the children, and writing a poetry, She had also conducted many social services for the welfare of the people of the region, especially about the women's welfare also. The problems of the women were addressed by her. Dear learners, let's have a glance over the literatures of the Sokoto Caliphate. As I have said, Usman Dan Fodio, Abdullahi Dan Fodio, Muhammad Bello, and as well Nana Asmau. They all were scholars in their own respect. And here you can find a list of literature that has been produced by them. For example, Bayan al Wujub al Hijra, written by Usman Dan Fodio. It was He was talking about why it is necessary for him to migrate, the obligation of migration, because he has migrated from Gobir, from his native land, to the Sokoto. So he had mentioned like that. He had also authored a book, Kitab al Farq, the book of differences, just to know about in what way, in what manner, when one can just draw an idea to, to differentiate between the good and the bad. So he has given the principles by which one can. Furthermore, he has also written a very important book, إحياء السنة والإخماد البدع. إحياء السنة وإخماد البدع. It was about the revival of the Sunnah and the suppressions of the innovation. That how to revive the Sunnah in the circle of the people. What norms should be taken up? What measures should be taken up? And also discussing how to end up the shirk. Because the people had somehow knowingly and unknowingly were performing shirk. So he was talking about suppressing the shirks. Abdullahi Dan Fodio has written a book, Zaul Hukam, Zia, the light of the rulers. That what the effect they are giving to the society, what effect they are making on the society, and what are their motives. He has written in this book. He has also authored Tazin al-Waraqat. It is about the historical record. His son Muhammad Bello had written Infaq al-Maysur. It was also about the recording of the differences, the historical record, Infaq, the differences. What was the cause of the differences between the ruler of the Gobir and Usman Dan Fodio? He has recorded. Then he has also authored Ghais al-Wabl. It was also upon the political history of the Sokoto movement. And lastly, we find a very important work by Muhammad Bello, Al-Kashf al-Bayan, the ways of inspiring the people through its lectures, through his objectivities. Dear learners, what we have studied in due course of lecture, let's have a glance at what we learn, what are our learning objectives through this lecture. What we learned first of all, the Sokoto Caliphate was established in the early 19th century in the present day Nigeria, the Sokoto, in 1808. We have already mentioned. Another important aspect that it was founded by Usman dan Fodio, who wanted to reform his people, his society, and to draw themselves toward the teachings of Islam. Then we learn that they promoted education, and that resulted into establishment of a school in every circles with the zeal to promote the teaching of Islam. The Islamic curriculum was moduled for these schools, and it was strictly followed in the schools. They were of the opinion that the Sharia, that is the Islamic law, to be implemented throughout the region. Because if one will be under a Sharia, a constitution, a law, and if they will abide the law, the Sharia, then definitely they will become perfect in their faith. So they implemented the Sharia in the region. This was also the reason of the difference between the ruler of the Gobir, Nafata, later with his son Yanfu also. This was the reason. They had produced several works, literatures, to implement their objective, their perspective, their viewpoints. I have mentioned some names, like the obligations of the migrations, and many more. Further, dear learners, the Sokoto Caliphate was based on the Maliki Mazhab. As we have discussed earlier, that there are four important Sunni schools of jurisprudence, and every Sunni school of jurisprudence has its effect on the Muslim society. The West African region had adopted the Maliki Mazhab, and the Maliki Mazhab suits to them because the way it has been derived, formulated, that suits to them. And apart from following the Maliki Mazhab, they also strictly follow a variant of Sufi order. There were many Sufi orders. So they follow the Qadiriya Sufi order. And they revert the founder of the Qadiriya Sufi order, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jailani, as a great personality. They consider the teachings of the Qadiriya Sufi, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jailani, was very much in the lines of the true teaching of Islam. We also learned that he admired the writings of Ibn Taymiyyah also. The way Ibn Taymiyyah has talked about the implementation of the Tawheed, the, the values of the Tawheed for the Muslims. So he was very much impressed by that one. Furthermore, We learn that the women played an important role in the society. For example, the daughter of Usman Dan Fodio, Nana Asmau, she was a scholar, she was a poet, she was the author, and she was also a social activist. She promoted the women's education that was not available at that time for the women. She advocated, like her father, she advocated for the education of the women. Further, we found that the caliphate expanded its territory by conducting the jihad. As we discussed about the Fulani jihad, it was through the Fulani jihad they were able to expand the territory of the Sokoto Caliphate. The jihad basically led to the establishment of several powerful emirates, as we have discussed, like the Kano Emirate, like the Katsina Emirate, like the Zaria Emirate, like the Bauchi Emirate, like the Adamawa Emirate, and as well as the Sokoto Caliphate. What further we learned that there were some important key figures also, important personality who had played an important role in shaping the Sokoto movement and the Caliphate. They were himself, Usman Dan Fodio, the founder, his brother Abdullahi Dan Fodio, his son Mamadou Bello or Muhammad Bello, his daughter Nana Asmau. They were a key and the principal person. Okay, thank you very much, dear students. Thank you very much.